5. We had a very productive insurance committee meeting, which was a little bit faster start point. My apologies on behalf of the board. If I could, Mrs. J. please, roll call members.
Mrs. Mary Miller.
Here.
Mr. Leister.
Here.
Mrs. Sue Miller. Here. Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mrs. Griesman.
Here.
Mr. Randall.
Here. On behalf of Heather Eelhoff and the Eelhoff family, I wish to let everybody know that we had a very long and emotional conversation this afternoon. She regrets deeply her presence not at this meeting this evening for obvious reasons. She was addressing issues relative to the tragedy from Sunday and the loss of Jim. And she does want to bestow her gratitude to everybody in the community for the outpouring of support. And she wanted me to tell you all that, so thank you for that. This time, if you could take our respective moments of silence.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Application pursuant to 1924 as a vote. Yes, sir. At this time, public comments. I have 4 individuals who signed up. First on the list, Mayor Miller.
I want to address this, and I think Jim Leister, you were on the board with me at the time. We had completed Form 225.2, which was an administrative evaluation, and submitted it to John Kenworthy. It was a closed session meeting that was held to do the evaluation with the superintendent, Michael Crum. After speaking with Mr. Kenworthy recently to refresh my recall, he stated, yes, he recalls, we did this. The consistency was found within the evaluation form responses by the board members that did this. He did not write it up separately, he said. I can't respond prior to that. I'm just wondering, Tim, if you had checked with prior board members that you might communicate with, like Gina Gaden was a past board president. I'm not asking for a response. Just a reminder that I have mentioned this to this board on at least 3 different occasions. I believe that you, Tim, have not asked Mr. Kenworthy about this, and John Kenworthy is a man of integrity and highly respected. And I do take offense that you criticize former board members. I question if this is purely a political situation, otherwise I really don't know what's going on. So, my concern.
I'll give a response, and thank you, Mary. I did speak to Mr. Kenworthy. It was roughly the 3rd week of February, and I asked him the question. The first question I asked him for the record is, when he did not file for non-candidacy papers in the fall of 2010 or candidacy papers in 2011 and put a letter to the editor in the paper saying he fired himself because he couldn't get it done, I asked him what his definition of it was. And he said, I couldn't get standard structures and accountability put in place. Then I asked him if he had ever done any formal evaluations where an interaction and exchange happened between him and the respective superintendent, where it was filed formally in a folder, and however they kept him. And he said no.
He did not write it up, that's correct.
Okay, well, and that was my understanding. And then when I asked the district office for any evidence of any formal activity on evaluations for this district, the only evidence they could produce, for whatever reason, and I'm not even going to talk about that, was December 16th of 2003. And it was signed by Board President Gene Gaden, and it was for William Rochester. So for the record, at that moment in time, the only actual record on file that we had to use for a template, which is why I was asking in the first place, what did we do in the past to give us some structure so we could get things back on track again? There was nothing to work with. So that's why I think we just need to get some structure. We need to get the standard in place. So what you did as a board member back then and went through Form 225.2, okay, fine, but did it take us to the place where we had something on record for the file to use, to consider for templates, or to reflect back that it was actually completed? No. And that's
Not that it was completed, John.
Correct.
He did not
Yes.
write it out, but
Yep.
Jim, we filled it, you were on the board at the time with me, and we individually filled this out and gave it to him.
Yeah, but right, we always assumed it was done.
Correct.
We
You're
didn't-
right.
We never knew that nothing was done
You're
since
right.
'03, or there has been no,
Well, I wasn't on the board.
And on topic for emails, the reason I wanted to know is when you were trying to recreate something, obviously, it would have been great to have a head start. It would have been great to have some template or some past practice, and to have something dated for more than 10 years was a concern. Formal filing was a concern. So we need to get that process back on track. But I'm glad you brought it up. Jackie Chico, please. Microphone use?
My name is Jackie, and I've attended many of the board meetings in the past year. And it wasn't just last board meeting 2 weeks ago that it was pretty full, a little bit even fuller than tonight. And it's been apparent in the past year, there's been more community support and community involvement in coming to the board meetings, which is great. However, the bigger the room and the more filled it gets, it seems as soft as you guys talk. You know, I can virtually only hear Mr. Smazel, Sue Miller, and Mr. Hanson, you know. And it seems like when, you know, we've raised our ears 2 weeks ago, you know, he spoke up for about 2 minutes and then kind of went back down. I'd ask maybe just to look into either possibly getting, you know, some battery-operated microphones for these board meetings, or just be very attentive that people in the back can't hear you. You know, when you're talking, if you need to sidebar and discuss something, you know, that's one thing, but when you're talking about policy or you're talking about, you know, things that are for discussion, I think it'd be great if we could all hear you. Thank you.
You. Robin Goodrich, no topic of discussion.
I'd like to talk to you about my disappointment over the cancellation of last week's Visionary Committee meeting. I am a member of the Visionary Committee, and we expected, those of us who attend those regularly, that we were coming to a meeting. It wasn't until late in the afternoon that I found out that there would be no meeting. Upon doing an open records request to find the reason for the cancellation, we also discovered a violation of walking quorums. And so I'd just like you to know that we're aware of that, and I would expect that this board would conduct itself with more integrity and follow the law.
Robin, could you please be more specific on the walking quorum?
Well, when one board member emails the superintendent and then includes another board member, am I wrong in that that's considered walking quorum?
Correct.
Okay.
Was it correct to say that she's wrong?
Correct that she's correct. It is a walking quorum. That's why the attorneys have told us repeatedly when they've done the training with us to not do that. And that's why Mr. Smaza, when he sends out information for us, it says, do not respond.
Bob Butler's mentioned that the last 2 times he was here.
Yes.
Well, Mary, you yourself sent an email to the board. It was regarding our Common Core presentation, and Sue responded to you, and it was to the whole board. Wasn't that a walking for?
Yeah, well, I guess.
At that time, we were just being notified of that, so I wasn't aware.
No, we already had a board meeting. It was after approving the Common Core presentation.
We didn't have a Common Core.
This wasn't sidebar. You're saying the same thing that Mrs. Bendridge said.
Just like
Mary,
with
you are
core
saying-
curriculum,
excuse
and
me.
we collectively decided as a board that we would have speakers on both sides and you decide to independently do your own thing.
No.
Meetings
No,
and
you
place
got it.
things in the paper. Is that ethical?
You've got the timing wrong, Sue, and I'm not gonna argue the point here. But your email exchange came after approval of the board for the presentation, 7-0. After that was when Mary sent an email stating she did not want taxpayers' money going for a political speaker I had chosen wasn't political, she's an expert who has testified in Madison. The DPI isn't political that I know of. That was the other speaker. DPI declined to be part of that presentation. It was after that that Mary sent the email. I have copies of it. And you
decided
responded
collectively that we would hear both sides. You decided to work independently.
after I was told I could not have the presentation held at the high school. It was never voted on to cancel the presentation. It was never voted on to cancel it. It was voted on to approve it. And it was at the presentation, Mary said, it's posted on the website that it will be held in the auditorium. Mr. Hanson said, oh, you have to take it off. That part really did. It was never voted on by the whole board to not have the presentation.
What the vote was about paying to have this person stay, paying for lodging and whatever for her
That
travel.
was approved by the whole
And
board.
I said I did not.
It wasn't
if-
for
if
just that one
both-
person.
If there would be both sides. And then I said I did not believe political or taxpayer money should be used to support a political viewpoint.
The point being, the president CC'd on an email that he should not be CC'd on. He
Right.
should be letting that board member know that that's inappropriate board behavior, and that's not happening, is it, Mr. President?
Communication.
And we've had, since this, okay, my mistake, but since this, we've had stuff from Mr. Butler on 2 presentations saying we should not be doing this.
I realize that.
So,
I just want to point it out. It goes a lot.
and so now I know that, yes,
It goes a
and
lot
it's
of
not
ways.
occurred since his information, yes.
Last, certainly not least, Reverend Eric Kirchner.
Thank you. I would like to echo what Robin Bindridge said. I was a little disappointed that the visionary meeting was canceled last week, although the message that I received said that some of that was for health concerns and that there were some other circumstances. I came tonight expecting or hoping that I would see on the agenda someplace a discussion or explanation to the committee, to the community, why it was that, what those other extenuating circumstances were. I think that we've spoken often about the importance of trying to have the community involved in helping to speak about how it is that we further pursue excellence in education for our students. So I was just disappointed not to see it on the agenda. If I overlooked it, my apologies.
I didn't see the school perception, this topic.
Okay, so that's the topic, and that's where we'll be discussing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
That completes our public comments agenda. Any corrections or deletions to this evening's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Yes, there is. We are going to, based on the fact that we have one less individual this evening who is a key individual for all 3 issues in closed session, we are going to not move to closed session this evening. We'll move those items for follow-up to the next opportunity, whether it be April 14th or earlier, depending on the need. So we will not be moving into closed session tonight.
You don't get to unilaterally make those decisions, Mr. President. You don't. We have a quorum. We have 2 of the people
Okay.
from the District Administrative Evaluation Committee here.
So we have, well, I need, we can't do, no, we gather for the eval for the district administrator, and I need consent consensus for the second one, and that item A is not a closure status to the legal issue. It does not require conversation. And Mr. Renning, who thought he needed to come for that tonight, didn't come as well.
Oh, stop, right now. Let's review the memo that we all got as far as why he's not here, Mr. Rathman. What memo?
From Mr.
We all
Rennie.
got it. Look through your packet. This is the kind of dictatorship that you won't be doing here now.
Point
Here's
of order.
here's the situation that we have. If you want to read the memo dated today from Tony Rennie, you called him and asked him to not be here. I called him this afternoon to find out if he was going to be here to go through these topics, including the billing, which I asked about. And have that information here. I also asked Mr. Rennie if he was told to not be here, would he be okay if we could put him on speakerphone on his cell phone tonight? And he said that would be fine. So you told him not to be here. So don't go down the path that he's not here. We
He
can't have
didn't need to be here.
He's on the agenda. The topics for him are on the agenda. Nothing has been canceled.
Do we have closure for the legal issue? Do we have an agreement? Are we going to motion to finish the situation this evening, Mr. Schmauser? Or is it an additional update to non-closure tonight?
Should I cover that in my litigation update, or is it appropriate for me to respond now?
Well, we have to do something.
In the process of the agenda approval and our conversation on Sunday, you indicated that there was nothing closure-based, and so it did not require discussion.
Our conversation on Sunday was that there is not going to be full closure on this if you are waiting for the other party to sign off on it first. That was not going to happen before tonight. And that through the mediation process, which I will be updating later, Mr. Running asked that he do the update to the board based on what happened at the mediation hearing. And so he was prepared to come tonight to do that. You can't totally close it down because you can't control the other party at this time. But he wanted to go through what happened in mediation from our perspective and what we concluded and what we agreed to.
Mr. Smazzel, we've gotten updates before from Attorney Rennie without closure.
You sent an email stating that the closed items for the agenda were processed tonight.
After you advised me to do that on Sunday, yes, I did.
Because of a conversation that we wouldn't have the player probably involved, and we don't, for the eval and the second item. And the first item was not the closure-based conversation, so it was agreed that we wouldn't need to have closed session tonight.
That was not agreed upon by the board. I wasn't there on Sunday.
We had a conversation. I expressed my opinions as I always do, and it was decided that I would send out that email. And I did.
You filled out the form that Heather gave you, which we didn't, Brian and I never saw. You didn't see the form, I didn't see the form on January 30th, after we had had a couple meetings already with the evaluation, which is a few hours.
Yeah, if we are going to have a conversation about where we're at, we have an ongoing legal issue, then we'll have that in full session. That's not what I understood on Sunday. And then you asked me, do we need to repost? And I said, no, because we're removing things, we're not adding. And I said, I want to make sure, call Tony and ask him. And when I spoke to Tony today, I said, have you been spoken to about us not doing full session? He said, no. And I said, well, the email came out, we're not doing full session.
You sent me a text on Sunday morning asking me to call you because there was going to be probable changes to the agenda. I called you and we spoke about the probable changes to the agenda. And I respectfully sent out the email to the rest of the board advising them that these things had been shared with me in my conversation with you. And
fully understanding that we had agreement to not? Okay.
I'm not saying I agree or disagree, that's not the point. The point is that you asked me a question, and that's what happened.
No, we have a motion in a second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mrs. Mary Miller and a second by Mr. Troy Hanson to approve the agenda as it is.
I have a question. Did we straighten out on 10H, there's some, if you look at what's been printed out and what's on our website, did you look into that, Grace? Did you see that at all?
Oh, yes, and I spoke to Jeannie about it, and I'll explain it.
So they had
I-
Neola's, it was Neola's policy number, and then our policy was posted.
Our policy is ahead of Neola's, but it looks like it's combined. But I
Because that's
checked,
the first, it's usually ours is on the bottom.
I haven't even seen ours on the bottom. I've only seen, when, this is, I think, the second time Neola did this, that it had our policy in it. It doesn't have it with all three of them, it just had it with the human growth
Right.
and development policy.
Did you see that?
Combination.
Yeah.
No, how they had it. Ours is
It's a
first.
little-
Oh,
It's-
in the red.
Yeah, it's kind of Kewaskum backwards.
It's a little confusing, but I'll explain it when we get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I had, I'm sorry. Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. No business, approved dates and fill bill. I am waiting actually, Troy, for you to remind us why we had an exception to the expense process at the last meeting for this overall.
Well, we had an issue that I wanted to address regarding board president's time and conversations with Davis and Keelthau, which we're being charged for as a district. And from what I understand, you looked into it further, and they followed up with more detail on the billing for the January bill. Most specifically, your conversations relating to the administrator's contract. From what I received, there's two attorneys involved. This runs over roughly a week and a half of time frame. The total, based on their computations, the billing rates are $260 and $265 per hour. Comes up to $1,170 roughly. And this was all related to the administrator's contract, which Attorney Renning put together back in April and May of 2013, when it was coming up for a potential renewal or non-renewal time, 2/1. Evidently, there were some questions asked relating to it, because it all starts on January 20th. The point being, it's $1,170 attorney bills that I don't believe we have prior authorization to burn.
So, time and charges, total 1170. The specific admin contract review, I remember the statement in the last meeting, something about I or any board member should be calling legal. Right?
I think if you're gonna spend over $1,000 of board money, school district money, there should be some sort of authorization versus an open checkbook. If there's things that need to be checked, Bob Butler does it sometimes for gratis. But there was no authorization to spend in excess of $1,000 on legal fees for a contract that was put together just 1 year ago. That was a 2+1 contract. So, the question of contract that's got 2 more years already in it, sans a just cause situation.
Ready? Are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good? Good. Okay. The genesis of the need to reach out to Davis and Kilthau on or about January 20th was follow-up from work that I had done with Tony back in May and early June to standardize and structure the contract for the district administrator position. The goal was to ensure that we had a template that all you had to do was change the person's name, the start date, and the compensation level. We talked about standard structure. It was my project, my task, and I was chartered by the board to get that done. Requirements I had listed at the time to include, to make sure they were in this contract, were a hitchpin clause in case something egregious would ever occur with any person in the position, that the district would not be held liable like they were roughly 10 years ago with an individual who had to leave prematurely. And I didn't want my district to suffer a dime. The second thing is I asked to ensure that we had no rollover clauses or extensions in the contracts. Those are the 2 primary requirements in the task for products and services with Davis and Kilthau attorney. He did the work, he presented it to me, and said you have your 2 for a +1+1. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have a 2-year contract with a +1+1 and use the pluses as incentive for standard processing, not any one current person in the role, but down the road for decades. I trusted him. I thought we had that in place. I presented it to the board roughly early June, second week of June, I think, at that meeting, and it was signed and dated for the July 1st activation. So the original 2-year contract was null and void on July 1st, the new one kicked in. We then, as a board, addressed standardization and structure in the administrative contracts for the same reason. All we had to do was put in names, start dates, and compensation levels. Everything was boilerplate or perfunctory or whatever word you want to use. Make it nice and easy and fair and balanced for the group. And we also reset all of the administrators to be on the same cycle. So even though they weren't up for renewal, we had given some people a new contract. Case closed. Work done. Solution. Great. Fast forward to January 7th of this year. We had a phone conversation with Mr. Smossel. We were talking about evaluation processing. He made a statement to me that I found quite profound. I didn't say anything, I just thought it was quite profound. He made a comment about having extensions or rollover, an extension or rollover clause. And it was in an administrator contract, and he said it was also in another administrator contract. And I was quite surprised by that, because I did not go into that task to have anything customized or conditional. It was all supposed to be the same. I dug through my emails and found an old dated email, and I went to my legal preference, any one of the 4, Dan, Barry, Bob, or Ben down at Wasby, and I got a hold of Bob and asked him to take a look at the language to see if I missed something. Because I had brought it to the board for approval thinking we had standard and structure, and they said, it doesn't look like a 2 with a +1+1, this looks like a 3 with a +1. And I wasn't quite sure how that could be. So that's when I engaged with Tony, because the recommendation from legal at Wasby said you got to go back to the guy that authored it So I went back to Tony, and I touched base with him first to say what I needed to talk about, and we could dig up the record, and then we could have a conversation. And that conversation was concerning to me because I didn't know where it left us. When you start to think about blending the evaluation process into the timing of contracts and contract review for renewal or non-renewal considerations, because they happen, I didn't know where it left us. And I wanted to try to get us into a place where, from a standard and structured perspective, this district was going to start evaluating its people annually, whether they were physically going to have a review and something to their contract or not. You had to get into a cycle where you were touching that process in December, January of every year. And I didn't know where it left us because we had a modification to the contract. And that conversation ended, and I had to call back, and he wasn't there, and I transferred to another member of this team. And I conversed with that individual about the same topic to see if the perspective was any different. And oh, by the way, we had this other contract that was the same, which I don't know how that happened, but it wasn't under board watch. And that's pretty much the context of the conversations. Ultimately, there was nothing we were going to physically do to anything because we had just renewed them and we had just reset everybody in July, essentially, of 2013. But the whole concern about how things got changed from the standard process, I needed to call on that because he had done the work. And I trusted his result was going to be what we asked for, and it wasn't. And frankly, I don't know why I was charged for that time, because it was follow-up to products and services listed for a task that was done before that wasn't done right. And I had that conversation with Tony this afternoon. So the short of it is, when I called to seek clarification, I did so because of two reasons. One, it was my task and it wasn't done right. And two, I don't know if I want to get the lights here, but policy 142, if you haven't checked it out, does give legal authorization for the board president or the superintendent only to contact legal individuals when legal matters require. So I executed that for those two reasons. I do not agree with the fact that there's a charge for it. Tony told me today when they did the review they weren't going to charge me, and he wasn't going to charge me for coming tonight if he came. And I said, it doesn't matter if you charge or not now. You shouldn't have charged when I was getting clarification in the first place, and that's where the call got left. So
I'd like to follow up to that because I've got an email from Tony to you specifically. There's 4 paragraphs addressed. This is back May 21 of 2013 when you were doing the original contract, and it says right here, as plain as day, the board could always renew at the end of the term of the contract in parens, in this case, June 30, 2016. It's right there, plain as day. So, if you misunderstood or you didn't execute it the way you wanted, you were told what it was going to entail in that email. So, and then you were told by WASB to talk to the author, yet you spent just 3 different billings here.
Three calls.
You're talking to Shauna Lewis, who was not the author. So maybe we need to look at policy 142. Got it? Okay, but
the question,
we might need to do a modification to that.
the question, however, when one of the people, I mean, just like Dan and Ben and Barry and Bob, you ask if there's anyone else you can speak to. And that's how the call got transferred. I didn't ask to speak to her. They felt obligated to have me talk to somebody. So if there's a policy or process issue there, maybe the only person you talk to you call D&K is Tony, I guess. But in this case, she was willing to help. I'm just offering an opinion.
Well, I think you should be under the understanding that when you call a legal firm, you will be getting a bill.
In the case of Davis and Kilthall, that's obviously true. That's why I'm very reluctant to call them for anything.
If you call me, you're on the clock, you'll be getting a bill.
It's the opposite for.
That's how it works, and that's how it works in the professional standards, Tim. You're asking for an evaluation and another review, not a rewrite, not, oh, you made a mistake. You're asking for an analysis. That costs money. That costs our money.
I was asking for feedback, how the specifications for the requirements for the task went. did not meet the standard. He told me it was a 2 and a 1-1, but it wasn't. It was a 3 and a 1. And that's all. I just needed to get that clarification.
Was anyone aware, like, when these calls were being made, anyone from administration? Board policy also is that we're supposed to be working as a whole. I was not aware of that.
It says majority of the board.
Well, I made the call to follow up on the task that was dated, but it was my task.
Says board president or his or her designee may seek opinions as required, but should normally direct the district administrator to carry out this function. The board may from time to time engage special legal counsel for specific legal matters when deemed advisable by a majority vote of the board membership.
So in this particular case, it's just 2 individuals.
The last paragraph of the memorandum from today is, in an effort to eliminate any confusion concerning our January invoice, I offer to attend the March 24th, 2014 Board of Education meeting to respond to any questions from Mr. Rantham and/or board concerning our January invoice under the agenda item pertaining to, in quotes, approved Davis and Keel bill, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Rantham. In light of the fact that I was planning on attending the closed session portion of the meeting to provide an update as to ongoing litigation, I offer to attend the board meeting and respond to questions concerning the January invoice at no cost to the district.
Right, you said no cost, but he charged for the 3 calls to follow up on the task that wasn't done. So I'd like to talk about credit. So that's the answer. I mean, you initially got the answer in the beginning. This is a more thorough, but
I'm not hearing a solution to the problem.
it's all about clarification of the status of the contracts because they could change from when these signed off on. But they had it.
Those contracts didn't change when we were signed off, and otherwise they'd be invalid.
The presentation of what they were was not properly communicated to understand exactly what they
This is called, we're spinning words at this point. Contract's a contract, it was signed by you, correct, as board president?
I signed off on what he said we had because he said it was a 2 with a 1-1. It wasn't a 2 and a 1.
Did you sign the contract?
Contract was signed.
Then you obligated this district for that contract?
That's true. And when I came to find out that it was not what I was told it was because of the legalese, I questioned it. So now when we get done with this process and we get to a place where we have to do something new and different, we got to make sure we get it back to the 2, not 3.
You called it your project.
It was a task I had to work on.
It sounds like you didn't quite get your project done right.
No, we didn't. No.
No, maybe you, there's no we in that.
That's why we need to follow the work. Okay.
I just need to make one comment. The other administrator that's been brought into this, that contract was clearly and explicitly given to the board. So I want to make sure that that is mentioned. There was not any underhandedness or that may have been the way it was explained. That was clearly brought before the board, and it was clearly articulated in board meetings. So it was described and continues to be as a good faith effort to reward somebody for doing a good job. And that contract was extended for an extra year and also given more pay.
There might be a side issue related to this, because at the annual meeting, it was told from Mr. Kenworthy to a teacher, and that was, he was just told by Mr. Leister, there was obviously some concern about Mr. Smazel, expressed by Mr. Leister, and Mr. Kenworthy said, well, didn't you just give him a contract extension for 4 years? And it was told to Mr. Kenworthy by Mr. Leister that, don't worry about that, we've got a loophole.
Wait a minute, when did this take place?
Annual meeting.
It was between him and I? And you weren't there? Or you heard the conversation?
I heard from the conversation from a teacher who heard it from Mr. Kenworthy directly.
That heard it from the neighbor, that heard it from across the street, that heard it down the
Well,
road, that
Jim,
sent me a,
Did you say it? to
No,
Kenworthy?
I did not.
You didn't.
Point of order, gentlemen.
Okay, just checking.
We
well,
are-
I heard a lot of things too. Do I want to just start rambling on till about 10:30 tonight?
Gentlemen, point of order. I have nothing further to say about my action. So we're at, what, we're at an approval process, we're at an approval step. What's next?
Subject to discussion and action, so it's been discussed.
I just thought.
I'll have a motion to make.
You don't have a motion to make?
Why would I make the motion? I'm just reading the bills. Or the rationale for the bills. Not the bills. The bills are legitimate.
The bill is legitimate, and I believe we should pay the bill. Davis and Philco is owed the money for the services that they provide.
That's what I said last meeting.
I would move that they are paid. I don't know, is there a specific dollar amount that needs to be part of
No.
the, okay.
Well, it would be, let me get the word this out here, 86. Number I have from last month's report. The total is 8611 even.
Want that in that motion?
I think the specifics should be in the motion. So
Mary, you want to make the motion?
So what is it?
8611 and 0 cents.
I would move that we approve payment to Davis and Philco for the 8611, $8,611. Unless we have a discussion about why they should be happening, but we still owe them this money.
I'll second.
Motion by Mrs. Mary Miller for D and K payment of 8611 and 0 cents. Second by Mr. Leister for the comment or discussion. I need to address the issue of credit. That's my comment.
What do you mean by issue of credit?
I asked for a conversation to occur to dissect what this total stuff came to on the 25th of, excuse me, the 11th of March. And today, for the first time, I had a conversation while Mr. Renning was in Madison, and tonight, as I sat down, I got this handed to me. I have additional conversation to have with Mr. Renning about this matter.
Well, if you'd have let him come here, he could have given us that information right now.
The question
But you told him the data was irrelevant, and he said,
Question I need to
don't come.
ask him is my desire for credit. So that's my statement. The motion's on the table. It's been seconded. Further comment or discussion?
Going back to what Mary had said with the board policy, is there any tweaks or changes that we could modify to make sure that it's, we are working collectively and not flying solo?
Modifying a policy.
I realize that, but, we want to have a solution to the problem.
Well, there will be, we're working with Neil on getting solutions to all our problems that haven't been, policies that haven't been updated in years.
So maybe this is sooner than later. It's one of those sooner than later.
Yeah, but you can't.
Not for tonight, no.
You can for tonight, but you also have to, policy works in the OLA schedule, not ours.
What, Bill?
So there's 3 points here. One is, are we going to approve the bill, which we need to pay the bill.
Mhm.
2 is, Tim is going to try to get credit back. I'm sure we'll do more work with them in the upcoming months, and the credit can be put forward towards a bill in the future. if credit is given to us. And 3 is, in Neola tomorrow when we have our meeting, we'll just make sure that this policy is something that has already either been gone over or will be gone over. Because we're going to have all these policies done in another month, so I don't think there's anything that pressing short term.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Leister?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller? Yes. Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
No.
Mr. Ring?
Abstain. Before we leave the item, I did have one other statement I'd like to make, a question I have. When you look at the expense report for last month, you've got 3 entries that total the $10,800 that makes sense that Julie presents in her business manager report. But when you add the 2 attorney items together for Beal, Vetter, et cetera, and the B&K entry, you do not get that total. Right below the B&K item on page 21 of the report is the Department of Public Instruction entry for $485. That is coded legal services, but I don't know how that fits in our legal services process. I'm guessing that that is most likely a monthly charge of some sort. I could be wrong, but I think as a follow-up action item to this matter, we need to look at that line item on page 21 and understand why it's there, and if it is a monthly charge, that would bring you pretty close to $6,000 a year. So we would want to probably take a look at that as well.
It's not a monthly charge.
Okay.
And we can talk offline because it wasn't on the agenda. I can let you know what that is.
Well, I thought I'd ask it relative to the legal people.
Okay.
All right, moving on, school perception survey, what's next? We need to have the meeting we didn't have on Tuesday the 18th. We need to come into the room, in my humble opinion, with the people and have an open discussion about issues they'd like to see discussed for the survey creation with Mr. Bill Foster. My only desire is to reset a date sooner rather than later. Further comment or discussion?
Why did it get canceled? It wasn't a board meeting. It wasn't a scheduled board meeting. It was a committee meeting, but it wasn't a board meeting.
I'd like you to read what I sent to the board.
I'm just, you called me and told me it was canceled, and I couldn't make it anyways because of other commitment, but I just wondered why we did cancel it for the general reason of.
I would be more than happy to answer that question if you want me to. Mr. Grantham?
Go right ahead.
Well, I think there's people that want to know.
Yeah. This is what I wrote to the board. Chronological events that transpired concerning the visionary meeting cancellation. Upon presentation by Bill Foster and approval of the board, Bill contacted me wanting to tailor his questions to Kewaskum needs. We set up a meeting with the entire admin team and went over his questions, making them more specific to Kewaskum. Bill suggested that the survey be shared with the community for input and given to the board for final decisions. This transpired late last week, and on Friday, while on vacation, I spoke with Bill, and the draft was finalized for Tuesday's meeting. Frankly, I felt uncomfortable not including the board, you, on seeing the draft, weighing in on it before Tuesday night. Consequently, I sent it to the board on Sunday. Since Sunday, I've received a wide spectrum of opinions and feelings on the draft of the survey. During phone calls with Bill today, I shared with him the feedback I was receiving concerning the wide variety of opinions and feelings. As we were processing through this, Bill shared that through his vast experience in constructing surveys, opinions and feelings that were on both ends of the spectrum by board members was not conducive to a positive outcome. While on the phone with Bill, I received a text from Tim indicating he wasn't feeling well. It seemed to both of us, Bill and I, to be a sign that the most prudent course of action was to cancel the meeting, and more time was needed for the board to be conceptually aligned, fully supportive of whatever the survey questions evolve into. Before contacting the public, I called 3 board members on the committee for direction. I was able to speak with Mary and came up with the language used to inform everyone of the cancellation. Vicki and I personally called all board members and visionary committee members, as well as posting on the website and doing an all call to parents. Thanks to those who helped spread the word. Moving forward, Bill has recommended that we set a meeting for him to meet with the board to get conceptually aligned prior to meeting with the public. He is available on 4/28, which would be our second board meeting next month. Seems to make sense, yet look to you for direction.
I'm perplexed. We voted 7-0 to proceed with the survey. Why do we need to bring it to the board again to talk about it when this is a community survey? And I thought the point was to get a wide range of inputs about what the survey questions are going to look like, just the general format of the process. So we all wanted questions in a survey sent out. What was the wide range, Mr. Smauser, what was the wide range of responses that you got that made it look as though we're not aligned?
I have gone through a lot of firsts in the last 2 years. So I humbly respect the fact that when you're trying something new, you don't know exactly or what's going to transpire when you're doing this. Bill Foster came in and did a presentation to the board as well as to the public about what his services are. He gave a presentation that included sample questions about what he has done over the last 10, 15, 20 years and thousands of questions that he has done. It was my perception that the reason we were going to hire him was that we didn't have the expertise nor the time to develop the questions ourselves. When he was informed that the board approved it, unanimously approved it, he went on the idea that he was supposed to put together the questions, put everything out on the table, Kewaskumize it, and then get everybody an opportunity to have a chance to look at the questions. His general way of handling it was to take it to the community first, after Kewaskumizing it with the administration, and then give it to the board for final approval, because ultimately the board has the final approval on anything. And so that seemed to be the most expeditious way to go. I was a bit uncomfortable with some of the questions that were on that. I shared that with the administration team as well as Bill Foster when we met. But like everything else, it's not my decision to make, nor did the administration have or Bill feel strongly one way or another. There wasn't consensus, so we left everything on the table. That's why I sent it to the board on Sunday, because I knew there was going to be some tough questions, difficult questions, hard questions to ask. And, sent it out saying, give me your feedback. If you have feelings one way or the other. And I did receive 2 that said, yes, this is exactly what we need. This is why we're hiring this guy. You've got to ask these hard questions. 2 that said just the opposite. Absolutely do not show this to the public. It's not what we want to do. We need to slow down. We need to go back. We need to try to develop the questions ourselves. Would be a mistake to show the survey to the public.
Well, I was one of the people that called you and said, this is awfully short notice. They were given an email to go over something that the board wasn't even included in. As far as the questions go, we had the administrative team included, you were included, and all of a sudden you get an email and the cover of the letter for the survey had Mr. Ramplin's name on it and yours. and I don't know how you can put somebody's name on it when they had nothing to do with the formulation of it.
Because that letter
Anyway.
is not gonna go out until after he would have had the chance to formulate. He was putting a draft together. After the board would have formally approved it, that's when that letter would have went out. So it was a precursor, it certainly was nothing more than a draft.
But it's always.
And that was his, as I said earlier, Grace, that was his structure in place, not your administration team. It was his structure that he decided that that's the best way to move forward. So we're just following, kind of like with AFG and some of the things that happened with the insurance things. We bring in these experts, they say this is what you need to do, we expedite it for them.
And I thought that this survey was going to be presented to the visionary committee, the people that would come that evening on the 18th to look at this. Yes, are these, do you have other questions? Something like that, that there would be that discussion with them as well. That was my understanding.
Well, right, to discuss it. But everything that comes to the board, not everything, a lot of things that come to the board come at the last minute, and we're supposed to say, okay, or approve this.
Well, this wasn't a final approval. The visionary committee was going to look at this.
Right, I'm not saying it was a final approval, but it didn't give enough time. I saw a lot of questions on there that I thought, I thought of a lot of questions that could be added for the whole community.
Well, that was the point of
For the
having a meeting on
18th.
Tuesday. To
Right.
get together and have this discussion. We approved this guy and the process 2 weeks prior to this, I believe, 10 days, whatever. With plenty of enough time. We knew this was coming. This was the beginning of the process. This is the stifling that people are concerned about. Their questions, get the questions out there. It's an opening, it's an outline that we're gonna fill in, delete, add, etc. What's the problem? Let the community have their piece on Tuesday night.
When I was elected to the board, I was elected to represent the whole community, not only 20 or 25 or 30 people that are going to be on the visionary committee. When I saw the survey, again, I thought, this is not representation of the whole community. I know we would have had the ability, but it was given to us at such short notice, and that's what I have a problem with.
We approved it 10 days or so prior, Grace.
Approved it,
How many
we
years
did,
did
we
you want?
did not approve.
The questions.
questions.
We weren't supposed to approve the questions.
I know,
Grace.
but
We're not.
we should not only be involved in approving things, we should be involved in the process of things, like sitting in with the administrative team, sitting in with Mr. Smazel.
Did you want an
and
office
offering our,
here?
don't be sarcastic, Troy.
Well, that's
I
what you're
do-
saying.
No, I don't want an office.
Tuesday night, we were supposed to talk about the questions and expand and contract through the process. So now we're filtering before we're filtering.
What would be the difference if a board member or two, or the whole board, or who could make it, would have been invited to sit in with the administrative team and Mr. Smazel?
But
in the
actually,
process?
those questions on that survey were part of his presentation to us when he presented to the board. Initially, he gave a sampling of survey questions that have been
sampling.
used in other districts. They were very similar to the survey that I looked at.
My point exactly. At this meeting, Mr. Smazel just said they wanted to customize it towards.
Use Kewaskum's name in there.
Right.
I look at it going forward, we have two options. We either schedule a meeting with the board and we get conceptually aligned, or we schedule this 4/28 meeting with the visionary.
Let's just reschedule what we had and start all over and let the community have their input. And we'll be there, and administration will be there. We'll have the whole group.
I have a concern about censorship, and that's how I feel by not having this available to the community to look at, to talk about with the board,
We're not censoring
community members.
Mary.
I thought it would be to say, no, we don't want these questions, we're not gonna allow these
No,
questions. Let the community decide as
I think
well.
a question like, I think they should all be on there, but I can see a lot more being added. The question about, do you like it, or do you want to have a dirtier school, or should we not clean the school as often? What kind of question is that?
That's a legitimate question.
Well,
My office gets cleaned once a week during tax season. It's once every 2 weeks, not during tax season, because we're not there 16 hours a day, not during tax season.
In the proposal that was given to you, Grace, that stated January 29th, the questions were already given to you in January. and it was just a Kewaskumizing of some of the questions that he's used in the past. So, this packet is dated January 29th, so.
Agreed, but I would think
I would hope the community would have additional questions
I'm
and
sure they
things.
will, Mary, and I welcome them.
Well, then let's have a meeting. Then let's go for it. Let's schedule the meeting
I had
as Mr.
nothing to
Foster
do with
decides
it.
and proceed.
Well, you obviously have feelings that you're really glad it got canceled, so it
Let's
just worked out
proceed.
for you then.
Let's
Oh,
keep moving forward.
The expectation of the community for this session to come in and have nothing to work with, or are we expecting to give them a head start with some of the questions that administration has to accelerate the process? I thought that they were going to come in. They were going to come in.
Administration has no questions. Bill Foster, school perception,
Okay.
has the questions. Administration has nothing to do with this except for Kewaskumizing it.
Okay, so, all right.
What does that mean?
That means if you're going to talk about budget, you should use financial figures that Kewaskum has, not just general. So you cut $2.2 million in the last 4 years instead of, hey, we've cut a lot of money in the last 2 years, and you Kewaskumize it specifically for what we're talking about.
I get that now, that's not the way it sounded though, when you were first explaining it.
Tailor the questions. I don't know how else to put it.
So they'll have a head start on some subject matter issues that are sensitive for the district. They're not going to come in and help create it from scratch. There's going to be head start information, inputs.
Well, since Bill Foster's
Only
done
go
this.
back to January 29th that the board approved. I mean, that's what he outlines in his proposal.
Well, I would think over 20 years, Bill's probably seen some pretty common questions. I would imagine he would build those into our little bit of a jump start, because we don't know anything about creating a school survey. So to take someone with 20 years of experience could probably get us, I don't know, 75% of the way there with the questions, I would think. And then we can add, and it seems very straightforward and simple.
428 is the best, huh?
He suggested that he's available. I didn't feel comfortable throwing out any other dates except for the 2 dates that are on the calendar for board meetings, which is the 14th and the 28th. The 14th he was not available. The 28th he is for board meetings. If you want to reschedule a committee/community meeting, you can set that anytime. And, you know, I would just suggest that we get a hold of him first and see what dates he's available, and then see what dates the board is available prior to setting that committee meeting.
My question is, what is the board gonna do? I mean, I want the community input. We have a sampling of the survey.
That's why it should,
Sure.
that's why it should be.
I could argue with that point. So I just think the 18th meeting from March should be,
Mark?
from March, the 18th one that was canceled, should be rescheduled and proceed.
We said it. So you have to check with him first, though.
I would suggest that we contact him and see what dates he has available next month. And,
428 is too long.
well, that's if it was going back to the board. But this is going right back to the committee is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
I think it should go back to committee, visionary committee meeting. That was canceled on the 18th.
May I say one thing? I was surprised it was canceled too, and I was trying to figure out why. It's not that those questions shouldn't have been presented, but because of the fact that somebody was sick and.
Grace, that wasn't the reason.
And can I share,
That's not what I shared with you that night.
Can we pick a date and keep going forward, please?
I move that we reschedule the school perception survey process with Bill
Please.
Foster
Find out.
ASAP. So whatever Mr. Smalso can do
with him
to schedule.
and the
thank you.
visionary
So,
committee,
Yep.
or visionary group.
I'm thinking Mondays or Tuesdays. Anybody have any concern about days of week? Just Monday, Tuesday?
Tuesdays are out for me.
See what he's got. See what he's got.
Okay.
As soon as-
So should I shoot for April 9th? No, Tuesdays are out. April,
9th is a Wednesday.
oh, I meant April 8th, I'm sorry, Monday. I was getting
Once you get the top three and
Yeah,
give us a
couple.
message, get a couple three and pick whatever's the
2 to 3 from Bill, and then throw them out to the board, and then the board can email me back the dates or call me and let me know what dates they work, and then we'll set it. And we'll get it out to the public as quickly as we can.
I just so everyone's right, now that it's not March 18th, I can't go any later than tax season, extra days. So I apologize.
Okay.
Yep.
Any, business?
Is there a motion you made?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to make a motion, so, yeah, let's finish the process. I did say I moved the schedule ASAP, but I can't qualify the date, so with Mr. Smazzle's confirmation with Mr. Walker, yes, as soon as possible.
I'll second.
Further comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Carries. So we'll have a message tomorrow. Business summer school courses, Mrs. Greer.
Yes, good evening. And believe it or not, the weather is going to start getting warmer, so we are already working on our summer school for this coming year. As far as changes for the summer school, you all received the packet, correct? For the courses that are offered. We did have some teachers choose not to come back this year for various reasons. Other teachers join us, so we have some new courses. We have 11 new courses that are offered this year, and 9 from previous years that didn't really have enough numbers to run, or those teachers have left that are not going to be running. So the booklet is well-rounded as far as the students, for the different grade levels and so forth. The only major change that is in place, if you turn to the first page in there, this year we will be ending our registration on Wednesday, May 21st. The booklet will be ready to go, and parents can start choosing their classes very shortly here. But on May 21st, we need that deadline to plan for the curriculum, the stuff that the supplies for the classes and that kind of stuff. Last year, we kind of extended that, and it was really hard to make sure that we had all the supplies for every class for the school year, or for the summer school to start. So I would like to have an end date of the registration process on the 21st. That gives me about a week's time to get everything running together for transportation schedules to be sent out, the students' schedules to the parents, so the parents can be updated and know when their kids have different classes, and we can get things set that way. The registration will begin on Monday, April 14th at 8 o'clock in the morning. That is a change as well. We normally started it in the evening. This time they'll have almost 2 full weeks to take a look at the booklet, pick their classes, and start the registration process, where they can do a hand deliver of their registration to any of the elementary schools, or they can jump online and also do that for the timestamp part. So that way it gives everybody kind of a fair playing field as far as the evening registration times go. So those are our main changes. Did anybody have any questions? on summer school
Awesome
this year?
classes. It would
Yeah.
be exciting to take a lot of those classes as an adult.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very good. The teachers have done a great job planning and choosing the classes for the students, so I'm looking forward to this school year. with the summer school. Thank you.
Chris. 9B, comment 4, just a quick statement. The most recent question about having discussion, other than the exchange we had earlier in this meeting, was pretty much the reason why this item's here. We had the question posed during the candidate forum, and there was 4 answers that said, yes, we should have additional information and conversation and presentation. So we have to say what we're going to do to make that happen, and that conversation hasn't occurred. Is it something the board should do? Is it something administration should drive? Do we put an ad hoc committee together? How do you want to make that exchange process happen? Any ideas?
Well, we all agreed to have it once before, until the $100 travel expense came in, which was for both parties, which was not asked for by either presenter. It was just agreed on by the board.
Let's go forward. Tim, I believe one of the SERS meeting, you said you were going to get speakers lined up.
I did. When?
Well, that was at the forum.
I was going to get speaker's language.
I can get a speaker
think
line
I
real quick.
don't know what's in there.
Mr. Smosko, are there people like Darcy, whatever, people that can present exactly what it is?
Well,
Or, you know, what the standards are? I mean, I've read some stuff and, you know, just basically what the facts are, not politicizing, just basically what it is.
that's not what was talked about at the forum.
It was saying to have both sides at the same time, so people
I
can form
just-
their own
Okay,
opinions.
that's
I just thought I would, this was in the Journal Sentinel yesterday, and it's just about what bills passed and what bills didn't pass in, and basically what it's saying is that, you know, there's all this stuff that didn't pass. I was gonna give it to you anyways, it's kind of a neat little document, but, the Smarter Balanced Assessment and the adoption of the Common Core, at least at the state level, is a done issue for this year. They're done meeting, they're not gonna do anything this year, so the next time it's going to be discussed is in January at the earliest. So I don't know that there's necessarily, there's time, if you want to take some time to look at it, and that's why I brought this here. So,
Well, I think that in the very near future, we should discuss at another board meeting to have presentations, and if someone in the district would like to represent the Cookwood side of Common Core and have another person in, so questions could be asked by the community. I know the community has a lot of questions on Common Core. This subject really just came out in full blast this past year, and that's why all the hearings.
It's been 4 years.
Yeah. But as,
Sure, 3.
when was the first time you heard about Common Core? Oh, okay.
I mean, I have standards, I had standards in my profession. The kids in college have standards that they have to comply with, and as they get out of college and they're in a profession and they have to take tests for licensing, there are specific standards. The schools have standards they have to comply with for accreditation. I had standards in my profession, everybody, and that's what Common Core is, the baseline.
Yeah.
So,
Except right now, there are 32 states that have bills pending against the Common Core.
I'm concerned about Wisconsin and maintaining the integrity
Well,
of Wisconsin education.
It wasn't called Common Core 3 years ago. It wasn't called Common.
Well, anyway,
Yes, it was.
I would like to see some kind of presentation back for the community. I would like to see some presentation back for the community in a format where questions could be asked, not just to be sat and told what the standards are. Discuss them, find out about them, find out what's good about them, find out what's bad about it. So I would like to see that happen. Anybody else? Would like to see this happen? Could we put it down for an agenda item at next month's board meeting?
Well, can we, you're looking just to have people by next month?
No.
Okay,
no.
just talk about it.
I just don't want to take a lot of time tonight. But I think seeing it was brought up at the forum and everybody agreed upon it, now maybe we can go forward and have a presentation with both sides at the same time, and a format so the public can ask questions about it, who aren't familiar. More and more people are getting familiar with it, but there's still a lot out there that people have questions. So could we put it down for an agenda item on next month's board meeting?
With the intent to get some structure and
Yes.
actions. Okay,
Yes.
Fine, done.
What's that step going to be? I mean, it seems kind of vague yet.
Well, to get something, get a component and a component of Common Core, just like we had planned last
So,
September.
Do some research
For
on
August.
possibilities for that.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe think about some dates and location and how we're going to communicate out to the community when we have to use the auditorium, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think the auditorium is your best bet for the community. It would be a community presentation.
Okay. Very good. We'll do that.
I know last time the DPI did not want to participate because they said if they did it for one district, they'd have to do it for more. So that's why maybe we should start thinking about our staff who's familiar with that.
I would respectfully ask that you do not put your administration or your teaching staff in the middle of this.
Okay.
We obviously have to keep our eye on the target and do things here locally with curriculum and getting our kids ready, and that's where we've been keeping our focus.
Well, then maybe people who are proponents of Common Core know of somebody who would like to be representing that side of the issue. If you do know of anybody, let us know.
Reports, conference realignment, Pittman.
Good evening. I'm not sure, I tried sending this out via the Drive Google thing earlier today. I don't know if y'all got it or not. I'm never 100% certain with that thing. Anyway, quick update. The conference realignment came brought about by WIA Board of Control passing back at the end of January. Schools involved in our new conference: Berlin, Campbellsport, Kettle Moraine Lutheran, Kewaskum, Plymouth, Ripon, Waupun, and Winnicott. It's schools from 3 different conferences: Eastern Wisconsin, which we're a part of now with Campbellsport, Waupun, Plymouth; Eastern Valley, which is Berlin, Ripon, and Winnicott; and Kettle Moraine Lutheran from the Wisconsin Flyway. On February 20th, the principals and ADs of the new conference met at Kewaskum Village Hall. The ADs, we began preliminary discussions on bylaws, sport offerings, levels, non-athletic activities within the conference. The principals also began discussions about the non-athletic issues. At that time, we decided for a conference name and logo that we would have a contest amongst the students from the 8 schools. There was little response from the students at all schools. March 18th, the ADs met in Fond du Lac, spent most of the day working on that. Conference name was chosen at that time to forward to the principals, which name we went with was the East Central Conference. We have not made any determination about a logo yet at this time. That's the least of our concerns at this point. Constitution and bylaws were worked and agreed upon, minus a few areas that need input from the principals. We began working on the sport bylaws, beginning with the fall seasons, as those are obviously the most time sensitive to us, with trying to get turned around for the fall of 2015, because we do work that far in advance. And those are nearly completed. And then March 19th, there's a committee of principals and ADs that interviewed candidates for the conference commissioner position. They did reach a unanimous decision and made an offer to that individual at the end of last week. Coming up April 3rd, the ADs and principals are going to meet at Waupun High School, 8 a.m. And the ADs are going to continue to work on sport bylaws for the winter and spring, as well as wrap up what we have for the fall seasons. And we will also meet with the principals to discuss any joint concerns or issues. And I would defer to Mr. Loft if there's anything specific on the principal's radar regarding that since the last meeting.
Well, our biggest issue was to form a committee to make sure we hired a conference commissioner, which we did. And we're in a position now to start moving forward to make sure that we have athletic schedules in place for 12 and 15.
That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent's report.
The litigation update obviously has to do with the ongoing special education litigation that we've been involved in. There was a 8-hour mediation hearing a week ago, last Tuesday, I believe it was. And after 8 hours of mediation, a decision was agreed upon by both parties involved. The board had given me the direction and the parameters, and we were able to stay within that direction and parameters to try to reach a mediated agreement. The other party has until Wednesday to agree to the specifics of it. Tonight was an opportunity to talk about the specifics from our end. Mrs. Nuslock and Mr. Running were the two lawyers that were involved, as well as myself, and they will go over the details of what the agreement entails from our end. And so we looked still forward and look to conclude this matter as quickly as we can. The second thing is that in last Thursday's paper, we had our first article about Respect Awareness Initiative, anti-bullying, trying to create a greater understanding throughout the community. This is one of those projects that if we can create a greater understanding throughout the whole community, we have a much better success rate or potential success rate. So we've been kind of mirroring it off of something that was done a few years ago in our meetings with the clergy, trying to figure out how we could have a great partnership. We came up with this idea together, and posters are being made, and a banner will be put across Main Street, hopefully if they approve it tomorrow night, which I don't think will be a problem.
Not by the construction where it's all torn
No,
apart.
it's where they put the new
Banner
banner.
goes up by the bank.
Yeah.
Should
So
come to town a little often.
it's really a great project, and thank you to the clergy and thank you to the art department because they put together these banners. Thank you to the administration that met with the clergy and came up with the 5 different articles that'll be in the paper 5 weeks in a row. And you know, I had the opportunity to write the first article last week. This week will be another 2 administrators are writing the article for this week, and each time each administrator in the district is taking a turn writing one of the articles.
Is it just going in the paper?
It's just going in the paper, and it should be on the website. I would suggest that we do that. And the posters are going to go up the week before Easter, and the banner should be going up that week as well. And that's kind of the culmination of the whole experience. And fortunately for us, a number of our clergy in town are going to use that as an impetus for their weekend talks during that special time of the year.
Called a sermon.
All the sermon. So, and thirdly, last Wednesday, we had the first annual bus driver breakfast. And we had the bus drivers after their second route with the elementary school come over, and 23 out of the 24 bus drivers joined us. And we started off with breakfast, and then the kindergartners from KES came in and sang Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round. And it was just about as cute as a thing as you're ever going to see. And then Mrs. Hype put together, Mrs. Hype very creative this way, she had little goodie bags for all the bus drivers, and they were little chocolates that were wrapped up like buses. And then she put on it, we really appreciate your help. So, and gave them all that. We just thanked them, and they, 2 of them stood up and said, I would not drive for any other district except this district. I love this district. I love Lori at the bus company. I love the administrators. And you guys really do a great job here. And we're very happy with our partnership. And it was very special to hear that. So it was a great morning. It was a really great morning. Mrs. Budnek is not here, but her report is in your packet again, and she believes it's fairly self-explanatory. So unless there's any other questions?
Cover school update, Heidi Williams.
Mr. Jenkins, something to Go with the above. Thanks, Ms. Brandon. So we're looking at our full scenario information that we learned last week as our glasses half full versus our glasses half empty. Joe and I went to the Next Generation Symposium, as it comes up there. So the Next Generation Symposium was all about charter schools, and it's the Wisconsin Innovative Schools Network. They kind of helped co-host it. It was done by CISA 6. And we learned that there were some key significant changes in the planning grant for this next year. One of the big key changes is that they're now moving to phases for distribution of the grant. So phase 1, you only get 50% of the approved charter school funds. Phase 2, you get the other 50%, barring that you have a non-stock corporation verified and all the paperwork done and submitted and ready to go by December 1st. Otherwise, they won't distribute the rest of those funds. Part of the reason why they did that change was because there was a big shift in schools were applying for planning grants, and then they'd kind of planned, but it would fizzle out and it would never come to fruition. They had reduced funds this year, so they really have to focus. It's going to be a very competitive grant process. Only 7 or 8 of them are going to get approved. And they want to make sure that the ones that they're going to be approving really are going to be going into action. So how does that change our timeline? Basically, a decision to actively develop the charter school needs to be made in order to pursue the planning grant. Otherwise, we really don't have any hope of getting it. So the school board will need to vote on a resolution to approve the development of, name to be determined, charter school at the April 14th board meeting in order to meet the April 15th deadline for the planning grant. So it'll have to be decided upon there. So we came today to give you a little bit more information on what this charter school could potentially look like. So you forewind this. This is just a quick video, and I put videos in here. Go ahead and hit the next one. The video that gentleman's talking about talks about vision and talks about the golden circle. The golden circle is what effective companies do. They take and they look at the why, and then the how, and then the what finally. So I want to make sure in planning this and in our conversations that what is not necessarily talking about the charter school, that we focus on the why first, because that's what Apple does. Why does Apple do what they do? The what's selling good computers, but that's not where they start. They start with the why. So why is there a need for a charter school? And I embedded the
the light
videos.
down a little bit so that it would be easier to see what's on the screen.
Thank
Thank you.
And one of the things I wanted to do those videos is that we're going to link this presentation up to the district website somewhere so that if somebody wants to watch the pedagogy or what really drives this, if they want to watch the videos, they can do that later. So when we look at accountability, I pulled districts from around us and I pulled their data. So this first one is Campbellsport School District. And this is last year's data. WKC for this year is still embargoed until April 8th. So we don't have that data, so we have to look at last year's data. But if you look up there, the report card was at 70%. It said meeting expectations. Yet when we look at WKCE reading and math, they're only hitting around 40 to 50%. So we're saying 40 to 50% of our kids are career and college ready. Go through these pretty quickly. This is Kewaskum schools. We were at 72.5 meeting expectations. A little bit better in 2012-13, hitting that 60%, but that still leaves 40% of our kids that still are not career and college ready. Even looking at Slater School District, at 74.4 with their report card again. Highest one is a 67%. That still leaves a little more than 30% of our kids not career and college ready. And lastly, West Bend School District at 74.7, paying very similar data. So is it okay for our kids not to be college and career ready? Is it okay for that many not to be college and career ready? There has to be a change, and that's where I embedded a video in there that went through and talks about it's technology, it's a force bigger than us, and it talks about us preparing our kids for jobs that are not yet even created yet. And how when we send kids to a 4-year degree, by the time they hit year 3, a lot of what they're learning is obsolete because science is changing so quickly
and our technology is changing so quickly. So we have to start shifting that paradigm. So the paradigm shift in the other video that's there is by Sir Ken Robinson. I had the fortune of meeting the gentleman at the ISTE conference 2 years ago. And he talks about the paradigm shift in education and how we have to change the fact that we educate kids on a factory line mentality. We have bells, we have isolated subject areas that we need to start looking about educating our kids differently. But the most important fact is their date of manufacture or the date that they were born. That kids' learning is synchronous and asynchronous. That means that they don't learn at the same rate, at the same pace, at the same time. Some kids are better learners in the morning. Some are better learners in the afternoon. Some are better at math. Some are better at reading. Your brain and neuroscience tells us that we have plateaus with our learning, just like dieting. Who's ever been on a diet? You know, you diet, and then you hit your plateau, and you're there for a while until you start losing more weight. It's the same way the brain works with learning. And our current environment doesn't meet the needs of all of our children that way. You want me to keep going? Okay. So how are we going to personalize education? We looked at, in conversations with Mr. Schmatzel and with a bunch of people on our administrative team and kind of brainstorming and talking with some homeschool families, we really wanted to focus on 3 main areas. One was the 16 career clusters. We're expecting our kids in middle school to start defining their path on where they want to go. And then by high school, we're kind of saying, you know what, you really need to get this figured out so you know what kind of classes to take in high school. Yet we never give them the opportunity to explore what the 16 career clusters have to offer. So what better time to do it than in our K-5 environment, where the kids can go out and see what it really looks like and feels like to be in those different careers and how it ties in with what they're learning. And that's the key thing. So we also wanted to focus on that family and community partnership, because a charter school like this and changing an education paradigm is not going to work if we don't have partnership. We need partnership from the board. We need partnership from the community. We need partnership for families to really change this paradigm. And the last one is that STEM focus and starting to infuse with our curriculum the way it is compartmentalized, where we have reading and we have math and we have science, we have social studies. There's no time left over in the day to hit that STEM. Where are we really going to incorporate STEM when we don't have enough time to do it? So we got to think about how to do our education differently, not just in isolated subjects. And there's a lot of crossovers, and one of the things I've been working with was SignaCast, and all the different learning opportunities that revolve around SignaCast, and dies and casts and models, and how you can bring arts into that with creating casts and models in art class, and how young kids, when they sit there with the blocks and they start to classify them in red, yellow, and blue, what are they doing? They're classifying things. And that's what SignaCast does with all its alloys. They have to take all those metals and they put them into groups and they classify them. So they're doing that mathematically. They're doing it scientifically when we start to talk about the characteristics and the traits of things. All that can be tied into student learning. So that's kind of that how piece. And if we look at what are charters, they're innovative educational practices that help create and shape the radical change needed in our current system of education. And what you hope to do through a charter is you hope to have innovative educational practices that the rest of the schools will come in and say, hey, I want to go see what they're doing over there and come look. And if it's things that are productive and moving us forward, then it transposes itself into the other schools if it's working. And if it's not working, we have a higher level of accountability than the rest of the district, because the accountability piece for a governance board of a charter, we're not accountable to you, we're accountable to you. We're accountable to the parents in the community. The parents in the community are the ones that sit on our governance board. We're the ones that get to plan the curriculum and get to plan how we're going to spend the budget money. That governance board is what runs the charter.
Just real quick, when Heidi talks about other schools, this transpiring into the other schools, she's talking about other schools within our district. So these ideas, we want to explore these innovative ideas and get them going. Then all of our schools eventually, if this is working and this is successful, we can get all of our schools and all of our students learning in this model. And there's a lot of schools, there are some schools that are doing this without charter schools. We went to some in West Dallas, Milwaukee, and they don't have a charter, but they're starting to do personalized learning. They're getting their kids being self-advocates. They're talking about what they want to learn, what their goals are, and they're kind of planning how they're going to meet the different standards, what projects they're going to do, what assignments they're going to do, and they're the ones kind of driving their learning, which is really what we need in the future. The kids need to take ownership for their learning, and they need to be the ones driving it.
And I see this as a trust issue and a bonding issue too, because the board is going to say, yes, we're going to trust you as the community to try some different things. And the community is going to come back and say, yes, we trust the decisions that you're making, that you're going to help us go forward with the student learning and our kids' education. So this is that RSA Animate video that talks about that paradigm shift in education. It's an 11-minute video, so we're not going to show it, but
And we shared, with the board, we shared some of this summer, at the summer retreat, so you've seen some of this.
Yeah. So talking about all the charter schools thus far have designed these things called pillars. And they talk about pillars of education. And in my mind, a pillar is an isolated thing. So as we go forward with writing this planning grant, we're going to focus on more of a cluster type of model because we want all the things to connect and be intertwined. Kind of like how the kids are actually going to be hopefully, doing their own learning. I was at a conference actually this morning presenting with Tiffany Wilson from the high school, and I stayed around to hear about an hour of the keynote speaker because he's so powerful. He said that we don't want educators to be the sage on the stage, but nor do we want them to be the guide on the side. We want them to be the metal in the middle. And that's what the innovation in the charter school piece is. You want teachers to be the metal in the middle so that when a kid comes up to me and says, I really want to try that, I say, wow, I've never done that. But you know what, let's go explore it together because this is something you're really passionate about. So the kids are going to come to us with stuff that we haven't seen or technology that we haven't seen, and we have to be okay to model good learning for them and get in right there with them because we're not going to have all the answers and we're not going to know how to do it all of the time because of the technology. They can YouTube amazing stuff. If they're really interested, they go YouTube it. They don't need me for the content piece of it. They'll YouTube it on their own at home. So when they come to me and they already have that knowledge, it's kind of shifting that paradigm that I don't have to know everything. It's okay, we can do it together.
I just want to say real quick, I like the part with the teacher being in the middle versus the guide on the side, or whatever the other one was. Stage on the stage, because I often hear those too, and I'm kind of thinking, we don't have to be the sage on the stage. The teacher doesn't have to be the one that holds all the knowledge and the students got to wait to get it from us. Like she said, it's all out there. It's just a matter of guiding them, but then also helping them and experiencing and going through that learning process with them.
So that personalized learning is going to be our core. We're really talking about personalizing education and letting the children guide and make those decisions on how they want to move forward with their education. I have some documents here that I'm going to pass around to the board so that they can see it. This is stuff from West Dallas, West Milwaukee. I did not make copies of it, nor will I, because West Milwaukee is trusting us to show us these models. They asked us not to mass distribute it because they don't want it mass distributed. If we're really invested in this, they will work with us and they will partner with us. But this is a lot of where we're kind of getting our research from and actually seeing it. And I'm really, really happy today too because two of my teachers that went, one teacher that saw it, one teacher that's going tomorrow to see the model are actually here to kind of show their support that, yep, we get it as teachers. So that kind of inspires me. Thank you. So I'll pass these around so that you can look at them. Not only do they have, they call them pillars, but we're going to call them clusters, but they also have professional development for teachers. This is not a model that we're going to assign teachers to. Teachers opt into it in the West Milwaukee School District. So they actually take and they have to apply to become next generation teachers, and there's a whole launching year where they just go through professional development before they're even allowed to take on that next generation model. So it revolves around personalized learning, and it revolves around the college and career ready piece, which you already saw.
Just real quick to add to that, it's part of the reason too that I think they don't want you to mass produce things is because it's not a canned program. Like what West Dallas does is working for them, but us just trying to do exactly what they're doing is not going to work.
No.
Like we got to try and take what they have, see what's going to work for us, take parts and pieces of it from different ideas and figure out what's going to work for our community. And that's why you have the governance board as well, because they have the input and they get to have a say in that.
Competency-based progression. So we're really looking at when a child's ready to move, they move. And when we say ready to move, it may be ready to move in math and not in reading, and The subject areas can get off a little bit, but it's really based on that competency model that when I'm ready, I go. Because one of the biggest things, and I know even as a middle school teacher myself for 20 plus years, I would get kids that came in that had holes in fractions and didn't really understand fractions, or really didn't understand positive and negative numbers. Because we didn't give them enough time and the time they needed when they were younger. We said, nope, class is ready, we got to move on, and we move on to that next unit. And those holes only continue to grow and get bigger. So again, competency-based progression.
That goes back to the multi-age thing too. Like rather than, all right, second grade's over, you're now moving on to third grade, meeting the kids where they're at and continuing to grow their learning no matter what level they're at. A third grader might be at fifth grade math skills or whatever.
And the other thing that we learned by looking at West Dallas, West Milwaukee is you can't do this in isolation. When you do that next generation and that charter kind of school model, you have to do it with two teachers together. So it's kind of opening up those walls, and you have a pod of like 50 students with two teachers. So you're using, it's called a seminar and support model. So that one teacher at a time is running maybe a small group seminar while the other teacher is continually going around and supporting individual conversations, group conversations, sometimes pulling small groups based on what kids are working on and what they need. So this just represents that asynchronous and synchronous learning. Sometimes they're doing groups, and sometimes they're doing it by themselves and going at different paces. This was a huge one for me. This is autonomous learning. And this foundation of this whole personalized learning, ironically, is based off autonomous learning, which is the learner model for gifted kids. That model for gifted kids, where it looks at enrichment and seminars and in-depth study and orientation and individual development, is good for all kids. And I truly believe, as a person who's worked in gifted education for a long time, that we all have gifts and talents, and it's about finding our strengths and really exploiting those strengths and our gifts and talents. And to say you're gifted and you're not, and we're gifted and you're not, is just not the way our society should be built. And then the 21st century skill set. And this is a huge thing that I think we get scared of as not digital natives like our kids are. This model is not setting kids down in front of computers all the time. This is allowing kids, it's using technology as we need to, but it's allowing kids to have a box of spaghetti and a bag of marshmallows and say, now you need to build a tower in under 3 minutes. I want you guys to plan out how you're going to do it, and then say, okay, build it, but now you can't talk. So they have to build it without talking to each other. That's when you really see how well they planned it out before they began. So there's a lot of things involved in that. So looking at our next steps with this planning grant for the board, Joel and I are working on writing that planning grant. It's due on the 15th. We will have it to you for approval for the resolution by the 14th, by April 14th. Click another one here. Our big thing is we're creating an innovation team. We've already got commitments from quite a few parents. We still have 3 open slots. We have 1 teacher spot open, we have 1 parent spot open, and we have 1 community member spot open. So our goal is we're going to be meeting Tuesday, April 1st and Thursday, April 10th from 5 to 6:30 to really give a vision and a mission statement and run ideas by each other and make sure that we have a solid foundation for the planning grant piece of this. But what we're really going to be looking for is that, commitment that, yep, we're going to move forward and approve this. That being said, if we would go through with this and get that first chunk of money and all the planning went through, and let's say something fell through or the community didn't feel good about it, we can still back out of it. We just don't get that other 50% of those funds. So.
There's nothing concerning about it being due the day before we can actually vote on it. You're trying to send a message to the approvers for the planning grant that we're genuinely interested. Doing it the night before, that thing?
Because they're making that resolution piece and they just added that on, I don't think it will be the night before will be a problem with it, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of other people sitting in the same position we are now that this came forward with the new documentation. Because that board approval process takes time, and I'm sure that everybody's going to be in that same time crunch that we are.
Is there a limit to how many people will be given? grants, or is it?
They said 7 to 8. 7 to 8 across the
You have
state.
no idea how many are going to be applying?
No, we've just been told by Dan Hanran and some other people that are actually going to be reviewing that they expect to have it, it's going to be quite a competitive grant. So we have ran our ideas by Wisconsin Innovative School Network gurus, the executive director. We've run it by Dan Hanran of CISA 6. I've talked to Jim Furrow of CISA 1, and everybody really likes our model. And everybody, sounds like it could be a really good, solid model.
Can you explain about the governance board, please?
Sure.
And how that works?
Yeah, the governance board is made up of community members and parents. So those are the people that make up the governance board. The governance board is the one that it basically makes the decisions for the charter. The funds still flow through the district because we would be an instrumentality of the district. However, they get to decide curriculum. They can ask for waivers from the board for different board policies. So they decide that they may not want to follow the board policy for professional development. We might want the charter school to look different. Or we might want our day to look different, or the calendar to look different, or those other pieces, or some of the financial pieces. But the governance board decides that. On the governance board will also be teacher representatives. I'm going to make it mandatory that we have a few student representatives because I think that's an important part to student leadership. And they'll also have, the director of the charter school, whoever that ends up being, will also be on that committee, but they will not have voting rights. The only people that have voting rights are the parents and the community members that are assigned to the governance board.
And how does governance board get chosen?
It depends on how many people that we have that want to be on the governance board. If we have an abundance of people, then what I would probably do is gather up teachers and educators and some administrators and say, what kind of application process do we want? We'd go through some type of application process.
In that group that you had up here earlier,
That's the innovation team. So that innovation team, those parents and community members would get first dibs on governance board positions, but then it would be open after that.
and how many people are normally, I'm sorry, did I miss that?
7 to 10 are usually on a governance board.
Plus then a student rep?
The representatives, yeah, the director of the school, the teachers of the school, and the student of the school are all representatives on there.
So the student would be part of the 7 to 10?
No, the 7 to 10 are just community and parents.
So we got thrown a curveball based on conversations that happened earlier tonight, so I want to make sure everybody understands this, that we found out last Wednesday, Tuesday, that they changed the grant formula, and that the board needs to make a resolution by April 15th on whether or not you're going to make a commitment to this, that you're planning on doing the development of.
Yeah, it used to be planning, now it's the development of, so you have to make a resolution to approve the development of the charter school.
And we will have that clearly defined on the 14th. But we wanted to get it out here tonight, so that it's 3 weeks, that if the board has any questions about this, that please, contact me and we'll try to get your questions answered for you before the 14th. Because if you don't make the resolution on the 14th, then we don't move forward. And that's your choice, obviously. But we won't move forward, we can't move forward with the submitting the grant unless we get that resolution. And that resolution means that, in simplistic terms, all things being equal, if we keep moving forward, that we're gonna start the charter school the year after next. If something becomes unequal or something comes as a roadblock, we're not totally locked into to doing it. We can still back out, correct?
Correct. You will not get the distribution.
Even if you get the grant, you can still back out.
You don't get all the distribution.
If we don't get the grant, if we're not gonna go for the grant, I'm assuming then we're not gonna try to do the charter school.
That would be board decision. The board would want to go forward with charter school without.
And Jim's question is, in July or August, if we don't get the grant, we submit, we do everything, and we end up on the short end of the stick and we don't get the grant, at that time, you're gonna have to make a decision on whether you wanna move forward or try to go for a planning grant again and put everything on hold for a year, at that time, the board would then have to make that decision.
You don't know how many other school districts are applying to?
I don't, just that it's gonna be competitive was all they could share with us. It was gonna be a very competitive grant process.
That's why I asked that question, because it could happen.
It could happen, yeah.
At the state convention that Mary and I attended, we attended a 3-hour workshop on with the Wisconsin Innovative Schools. They predicted that they'd get 15 to 16 grants. So you got a 50-50 chance.
And I hope when I talk about, and I did this presentation, normally I would have faced the board the entire time, but because this is so huge community involved, I just feel it important to also talk to the community on this as well. And I am more than willing to repeat this presentation that I just did here within the next 2 weeks, as many times as you need me to, if more people want to be involved, and more parents want to be involved and hear the conversation. If the board would like me to do that.
Location of the meeting at Wayne,
We're gonna plan on it being in our library. If it becomes too big for the library, we can move somewhere else. But this meeting really is just for that innovation team. And so the innovation team is really the only ones that are gonna be there for that. It's not really a community.
Thank you for saying it, but where I was going, I recognize some of the names and they seem to be Wayne municipality presidents, so is it mostly Wayne?
You wanna go back to it, Joel? Just go back one. I'm trying to get it well-rounded with our parents.
The teacher names are familiar and.
Yeah, the teacher names obviously are gonna be more from Wayne, just because I have more contact with those teachers and elementary-wise, you know, those are the people that have been in to see the schools. Wayne, with our numbers being the way they are, you know, I want them to see innovative practices and what other school districts are doing that have low numbers. So that's kind of what I want them to see. But for parents, Rebecca Smith is a Farmington parent. Jackie Elise is a parent who does not yet have kids in the school district. She has a 2- and a 4-year-old. So we wanted to get somebody from the outside who has kids coming up to kind of program for what their education could be. And Sarah George is a homeschool parent right now. So we have no Wayne parents. Well, Tracy Herman is a Wayne parent right now, although her child will be going to the middle school and she will not be anymore. So she's signing up as a community member. We're hoping to have some teacher representation from another building rather than just our building. You know, if somebody is interested in it, just so that we have teacher representation. It doesn't have to be an elementary person. Could be a middle person, since I see middle people sitting here, to help shape the vision of what it's going to look like. Because eventually, these learners are coming to you guys. So just keep that in mind. You know, if the charter school goes forward, it kind of changes, and that's what we heard when we went to West Dallas, West Milwaukee. It changes the learner. They have had to grow their program with their learners. So, and that would be the philosophy of what we would try to do too.
So the big part is, board, if you have any questions between now and the 14th, obviously anybody's invited on those 2 dates to come, whether or not they're on the committee, they can come.
I would say no, because we're going to focus on the planning grant and really honing in. I would rather have the board, if they wouldn't mind, ask the community if they would like me to repeat this presentation, because like I said, I will do it over the course of the next 2 weeks at different times.
Okay, so then on the 1st, and those 2 dates are for just those people on the committee.
Correct.
And then if need be, after the 14th, if the board approves the resolution and we submit the grant, then we would want to do a presentation to the community at that time.
Okay.
Heidi, is it feasible, reasonably feasible, to put this on the website so we can steer people there with a parent email? And that, because I know you guys are super busy trying to get this all put together. Maybe that's a way to satisfy a lot of people who go look at it on their own.
Yeah.
Necessarily get questions answered, they can email questions to you, just as a thought.
Keep it right there.
We'll put it there. This Prezi is, yeah, that it's done on Prezi, but that Prezi can just be a link. And then when you click on it, it'll take you to the entire presentation, the videos and everything that you can take time to watch.
I forget, if YouTube, we figured out it'd be YouTube.
Yeah. This is the link.
Kind of is not necessarily exactly tied to this, but I found an interesting article in the last couple of days, and it talks about how companies can attract the best college talent. And within the context of that, I think it kind of lends itself to some of these things that it's really interesting how kids pick colleges and kids are picking careers nowadays. A lot different than it used to be. So I thought maybe the board would find that interesting reading. I have, yeah. Kind of segues into that Washington County Job Now situation too. So. Yeah, Grace had asked a question and everybody got the handout with the survey.
We have a meeting on Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 9:30 to interview human resource organizations to help us with our package.
So we're gonna be 2 people, right, or 2 organizations?
So that will give us a total of 3, and then we can compare and contrast and decide which one we want to move forward with.
Yeah, we saw MRA, what, a month ago?
Yeah.
That's that.
We actually had a workshop with Associated Financial Group earlier this afternoon, and they were seeking out the bidding process for us, and there had 4 bids go out, and 2 of the 4 did not provide a bid, as they, I think they deemed that through the medical questionnaires that the district maybe too risky without having the claims data in front of them as well. But then the other 2, of course, provided bids, and Anthem came in very uncompetitively, and Humana came in very competitively. So currently, we're going to be comparing Humana with the current co-op, and we plan on bringing Humana in the near future so we can discuss some, more detailed, thorough questions and their options in order to provide the best health benefits possible for the staff. And they also talked about they did a study on healthcare reform as far as should the school district be in the business to provide health insurance, or do we have employees seek that out on their own? And with that study, they found it would be more expensive if we decided to have employees bid out their own insurance. And I think what gets forgotten is currently the benefits, there's pre-tax dollars, and by not offering it, those would be heavily taxed, and that's where those excessive costs come in. And then, of course, the $2,000 fine per employee. So that's where we're at. We're developing the plan for that, and when we get forward, we do decide to go with Humana, then we'll make sure we get the education in place for staff. More to come.
Okay, the first policy, and I have to explain why Jeannie ran these off tonight and passed them out to you, because when I opened up what was in our board packet, it's a combination here. The first part, option 1, is part of Neola's policy. After that, it says option 2, that's crossed out. Then it goes down with our human growth and development policy, 341.71, and continues on to the next page. Wherein Neola's policy starts again at the bottom of page 2, where it says the Board of Education directs that students receive instruction in human growth and development consistent with chapter blah, 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 and starts with A1, 2. Well, I compared the human growth and development policy with the policy we have now, and it has everything in it that we have in ours, plus more so what's in our rule. So my recommendation would be to check off everything, because, under option 2, and go forth with what Neola is recommending. There's just one thing, and that was at the bottom, let's see. Okay, on the very last page, the last sentence, right above end of option 2, it says the board, and here you have a choice to make. The board authorizes or does not authorize the curriculum to include separating students on the basis of gender as determined by the committee. Right now, our board does authorize, so my recommendation would be to check authorizes. That's how it reads in our policy right now.
Keep it the same.
Because everything else coincides with our policy and or our rule.
Right.
So, that's that one. Anybody have any questions on that one?
Because the human growth and development put a lot of work and time into developing our specific.
Yeah, right. Committee really did.
Right.
And I was glad to see that Neola's policy follows, little different, but it does follow it. And I checked it against the state statutes, and their policy, our policy follows all the state statutes, so. Okay. And the next one is 2510. Adoption of textbooks. Everybody had a chance to read this over. And we are asked to, we wanted to bring it to the board. The bottom part has a place where you can put check marks, what you want included or excluded from the, if you want to read over, or if you have already read over, on the first page, 2510. I don't know how they came through. I brought mine from my folders at home. I didn't take them off the computer.
It's the same as what we looked at.
What we had
in
before.
the- Right. What we had gone through the last
Okay.
with Neola.
Okay. The only one was the bottom one, appearance and durability. So I don't know if you want that on there or. Should we check it or not?
We didn't check it when we talked about it.
Yeah, no.
We didn't think that that was a criteria for determining textbooks.
Right. The appealing,
That how they look there.
or
how
if they're
yeah.
really put together well.
Yeah.
There was, the contents really is relevant, but it's really built well.
And it looks pretty.
And it looks pretty.
No, it wouldn't hurt to check it. I mean, it's no big, so I would check it. Why not?
Put it in if you want. That's why I brought it to you
These are all
guys.
coming back to us, so
Right,
it's not
it's
like
coming
you're.
in.
All right.
Okay. And then the last one, 5111. Thing that was crossed out was L. Non-residents may be accepted into the district adult education classes upon payment of the appropriate fees. That one is crossed out.
Because we don't have adult education classes.
It was just brought to your attention, so.
But then at the end, very end,
What?
on after P,
Oh, the updated
Well-
insert?
yeah, what, if we want that or not.
We haven't seen the updated insert. Oh,
Yeah.
here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the updated insert to this policy is the district administrator at his or her discretion may deny admission to a student. Oh, right, I remember this so well. Who has been expelled from another Wisconsin public school district for the period of the expired term of the expulsion. When the expulsion from the other district has expired, the student is to be admitted providing all other eligibility requirements have been met. Okay, so you are decided, that you are asked to check the highlighted. So if you read it over and decide.
And we said if, in the event that the district administrator, I had written down intends to enroll a student during the term of an expulsion order issued by another Wisconsin Public School District, the enrollment must be approved by the board.
Right. So that if you have somebody that's expelled from another school district and the superintendent wants to bring it into our district, the board has to approve it.
If that's what we want
Right.
to add.
So, does everybody would like to add that? I think that's good.
And I'm sure if the superintendent brought the student to us, everything would be
Manageable.
Everything could be manageable. Why would somebody want to bring a headache and they couldn't control? So,
They have-
right, they're responsible for it, so, right.
Yes.
And we have a meeting tomorrow, right?
Entertain a motion for full session.
I move to go into closed session.
11.